During Sunday dinner, my aunt announced that I should quit my well-paying job and work for my uncle's company out of loyalty. I just sipped my drink and said, "Funny you mentioned that, because as of this morning, I made a decision that's going to make this. Hey everyone, I'm Jessica, 30-year-old female, and I want to share the story of a family dinner that completely flipped my life upside down. I don't usually get involved in family drama, but after what went down, I'm not sure how to avoid it anymore. Let me set the scene. My family is the kind of group that loves to get together for Sunday dinners. It's not like some cozy, laid-back gathering you might imagine. It's more like a battleground of unspoken expectations, passive-aggressive comments, and the constant undercurrent of who's doing better than who. My mom, dad, aunt, uncle, and cousins have all been part of my life since I was little, but as an adult, I've tried to stay out of the mess. I have a great job, decent friends, and I'm living pretty comfortably on my own. I'm not perfect, but I've worked hard to get where I am, and I'm proud of that. Still, I find myself bracing every Sunday, wondering if something will set off Aunt and the self-proclaimed patriarch of our family. Aunt and is well intense. She's one of those people who believes in family loyalty as a unilateral thing, meaning she thinks everyone should blindly follow whatever she or my Uncle Carl say, just because they're family. Doesn't matter if it's reasonable or not. In fact, it never is. My Uncle Carl owns a mid-sized logistics company, and in Aunt Anne's eyes, the entire family should either be working for him or doing something for the good of the family. It's exhausting, and if you don't want to get involved, she'll guilt trip you until you're absolutely miserable. So, there I am, sitting at the dinner table last Sunday, just trying to enjoy the meal my mom made: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the works. I was minding my own business, chatting with my cousin Leah about how her new job was going, when Aunt and decided it was time to talk business. Now, I had a feeling she was going to bring up her favorite topic: my career. "Jessica," she said, leaning in with that look on her face, the one that made me feel like I'd just been cornered by a lawyer. "Have you ever thought about quitting that office job of yours and coming to work for Uncle Carl's company?" I froze for a second, unsure if I'd heard her right. "What?" I asked, trying to play it cool. "You know," Aunt and continued, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness, "we've always wanted you to join us. Your uncle's business is growing, and you could help with the logistics side of things. It'd be great for you, and it'd be great for the family." I took a deep breath, trying not to roll my eyes. I mean, how many times did she try to pull this stunt? She was convinced that any job that wasn't working for Uncle Carl was a waste of potential. And to be clear, I liked my job. I was doing well in my field, getting promotions, and building something for myself. But there it was again, Aunt and try to convince me that my success outside of Uncle Carl's company meant nothing. That loyalty to the family business should come before my own career. I could feel my irritation building, but I didn't want to explode. I just wanted a peaceful dinner. So I calmly put my fork down and gave her a smile that I could tell was too sweet to be sincere. "Funny you mentioned that, Aunt," and I said, leaning back in my chair, taking a sip of my water. "Because as of this morning, I made a decision that's going to make this interesting." She raised an eyebrow, leaning forward a little. "What decision?" "I've decided to stay exactly where I am," I said, feeling my heart rate tick up a little. "I'm not leaving my job, but I'm also not going to sit here and listen to you tell me how to run my life." Aunt Anne's smile faltered, just for a split second. But then, as if she had rehearsed how to handle situations like this, she went back to her sugary tone. "Oh, I see. You think you're too good for Uncle Carl's company, huh? It's not just about you, Jessica. This is about family." I could see my mom glance at Aunt and then back at me, as if waiting for the storm to pass. My cousins didn't say anything, which, to be honest, was a relief. I didn't need them to pile on. But Aunt and was just getting started. "Well," she said, her voice sharp now, I'm sure your little office job is fine, but you'll never really get ahead unless you're in the family business. Your uncle could use your skills, but if you want to stay stuck where you are, I suppose that's your choice. I felt a rush of frustration hit me, but I didn't want to snap. I'm not stuck, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm doing just fine, Ann. In fact, I'm doing better than just fine. I don't need to save Uncle Carl's company or give up my career to prove anything to anyone. The tension at the table was palpable. My mom was still trying to pretend this wasn't happening, but she was definitely watching, waiting for something to happen. Meanwhile, Aunt Anne's smile was tight, and her eyes flickered with something like disdain. You know, she said, her voice lowering, it's really disappointing to hear you talk like that. I was hoping you'd be more loyal, but I guess some people have different priorities. At this point, I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Loyalty works both ways, I said, my tone a little sharper than I intended. Maybe Uncle Carl's company should have been more loyal to me, too. Given the fact that I was the one who spent years helping out with small tasks and working extra hours for free when I was younger. That hit her. Aunt and blinked, her jaw tightening as I brought up all the times I've been expected to help out without so much as a thank you. For a moment, there was silence. I could see the wheels turning in Aunt Anne's head, and I knew she wasn't going to let it go that easily. But something had shifted in the atmosphere. That was when Uncle Carl spoke up. Now, let's not get too heated, he said, trying to defuse the tension. We're family. Let's not ruin dinner. But Aunt Anne wasn't done. Her voice, now cold, cut through the room. You think you've made a decision, Jessica? You think you've chosen your path? Fine, but we'll see how that decision pans out for you. And when it does, don't come crying to me about loyalty. The air in the room was thick with tension, and for a second, I thought maybe I had overstepped. But then I remembered the years of frustration, years of Aunt, and making me feel like my career didn't matter unless it was tied to Uncle Carl's company. No more. Not anymore. I could feel my palms starting to sweat, but I refused to let Aunt and see how much this was bothering me. I wasn't about to back down. Not now. Not after everything she'd said. Uncle Carl, sensing that things were getting out of hand, took a deep breath and tried to steer the conversation back to safer waters. Look, let's just calm down, he said, his voice a bit shaky. This is a family dinner, not the place for a business discussion. But Aunt Anne wasn't listening. She turned to him, her eyes blazing. Carl, this is exactly what I'm talking about. She thinks she can just throw away family values and walk away without consequence. What happened to loyalty? Her words were like daggers aimed directly at me. I couldn't just let her manipulate the conversation any longer. Loyalty goes both ways. I shot back, the words slipping out before I could stop them. It's not just about working for Uncle Carl. It's about respecting each other. I've been working hard for years, and I've never asked for anything in return. But it's clear to me now that loyalty doesn't mean anything unless it's on your terms. Aunt Anne's face contorted into something between anger and disbelief. She opened her mouth, probably to say something cutting, but I quickly interrupted. I'm not going to apologize for wanting a career that I built for myself. Just because I don't want to work for Uncle Carl doesn't make me disloyal. There was a long pause. My mom, who'd been silent for most of the dinner, looked between Aunt Anne and me, her face full of concern. I could tell she was uncomfortable with the confrontation, but for once, she didn't try to intervene. Maybe she finally realized that this wasn't just about me, but about a lifetime of Aunt Anne's control. Aunt Anne sat back in her chair, arms crossed, and stared at me like I was a stranger. You're making a huge mistake, Jessica. Don't say I didn't warn you when you realize how much you've missed out on. I swallowed, holding my ground. Maybe, but I don't think I'm the one making a mistake here. And just when I thought things were finally settling down, my cousin Leah piped up from across the table. Jessica, she said, leaning in with a glint of curiosity in her eyes. Aunt and might be right. I mean, if you did join Uncle Carl's company, you'd be set. You could be running things one day. It's not like you're going to get any real advancement where you are now. I didn't even know where to begin with that. Leah wasn't malicious. She just didn't understand. She wasn't in the same position as me. I'd seen her let Aunt Anne's ideas seep in her head, but I wasn't about to let her drag me down that path. Leah, I said, keeping my voice calm, my job isn't just about climbing the ladder. It's about doing something I love. And I'm not going to throw that away just because Aunt Anne thinks I should be doing something better. I'm not going to let anyone decide what's best for me. Aunt Anne's face went red. This family has been building something for decades, and you can't even see the opportunity in front of you. This isn't about what you want. This is about what's best for all of us. I was so close to snapping, but I held it in. I could feel the frustration bubbling beneath the surface, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. You know, Aunt, and I said, my voice steady but firm, you always talk about family loyalty, but it's never been about me as an individual. It's always been about how I fit into your vision of what family should be. But I'm not just a cog in the machine. I'm my own person, and I'm not going to let anyone push me around. That silence, the one that followed, was deafening. I could see Aunt and trying to piece together her response, but I wasn't going to give her a chance. I wasn't backing down. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Fine, she snapped. You think you got it all figured out? We'll see how long that lasts. Don't come running back to me when you realize what you've thrown away. And just like that, she stormed out of the dining room, leaving everyone else at the table stunned into silence. My parents didn't know what to say, but I could tell that they were relieved the argument was over. Leah looked at me like I'd just betrayed her, but I didn't care. This wasn't about her. Uncle Carl cleared his throat, trying to lighten the mood. Well, that was certainly interesting, he muttered, reaching for the wine bottle. But the damage was done. The entire dynamic of our family had just shifted, and I knew that whatever happened next, things were never going to be the same. I didn't know what to expect in the coming days. Aunt Anne would probably try to turn everyone against me. My mom would most likely avoid the subject altogether. But something inside me felt oddly calm, like I just made a choice that was going to change everything. As I sat there, picking at my food, I couldn't help but wonder what the fallout would be. Would they leave me alone? Would Aunt Anne try to sabotage my career? I sat there for a moment, my mind racing, but I didn't say anything. I just stared at the empty seat where Aunt Anne had been, the weight of what had just happened settling in. My hands were still gripping my fork, and I could feel the sting of her words echoing in my mind. But I wasn't going to let it break me. Not now. Uncle Carl cleared his throat again, this time more deliberately. Jessica, he said, his tone surprisingly gentle. I didn't want things to get so heated. You know how your aunt gets. I nodded, but I wasn't sure what to say. It wasn't just Aunt Anne. This was about a pattern in my family, one I'd been avoiding for years. A pattern where their idea of loyalty didn't leave room for my own goals, my own independence. And I wasn't going to apologize for standing up for myself. Leah was the next to speak, though she was still hesitant, unsure how to react. I guess I get it, Jessica, she said quietly. But Aunt Anne, she means well. She just wants what's best for the family, you know? I sighed. I know she thinks that, I said. But she doesn't understand what it feels like to have your entire life mapped out for you by someone else. I've spent enough time trying to fit into her expectations. It's time for me to carve my own path. The silence that followed was thick, and no one seemed sure how to respond. My mom, still quiet, looked over at me with a mixture of concern and something else. Maybe regret? I couldn't tell, but no one pushed it further. I wasn't going to engage in another round of guilt-tripping or platitudes. After a while, the dinner table slowly became quieter, the weight of Aunt Anne's words hanging in the air. We finished the meal in subdued silence, and people began to filter out one by one, retreating to the living room or their own spaces. But I stayed in the dining room a little longer, staring out the window, letting the moment sink in. The next morning, I woke up to an unusually quiet house. I had the whole day to think about what had happened at dinner, and despite my best efforts to push the thoughts aside, my mind kept circling back to Aunt Anne. I still couldn't believe how everything had gone down. It felt like I was in the middle of some kind of family drama that I hadn't signed up for, but now that I was in it, there was no turning back. Aunt Anne didn't waste time. By mid-morning, I got a call from my mom. "You should probably take the meeting with Aunt," and she said, her voice tight, like she was trying to keep things neutral. "She's been upset since last night." I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be a guilt trip or a warning, but I wasn't about to back down now. "I'm not just going to backtrack because she's upset," I told my mom. "She pushed me into this corner, and I'm not apologizing for standing up for myself." There was a long pause, and then she sighed. "Just think it through, okay? You know how she can be." I hung up the phone and stared at the wall for a few minutes, collecting my thoughts. Aunt Anne wasn't someone who took defeat lightly, and if I learned anything, it was that she would try to manipulate the situation to get what she wanted. But I wasn't about to let her do that. Not anymore. I decided to meet her. It wasn't about backing down, but about closing this chapter and having the conversation she clearly wanted. I knew it was going to be uncomfortable, but I was prepared. A couple of hours later, I found myself at Aunt Anne's house. I rang the doorbell, trying to keep my nerves in check. Aunt Anne opened the door with her usual businesslike smile, though it was evident she was still angry. "Jessica," she said, stepping aside. "Come on in. We need to talk." I nodded, stepping inside, and she led me to the living room. Her home was pristine like always, but I could tell the tension in the air had only thickened since last night. She didn't waste time either. "I've been thinking about our conversation," she started, her tone calm but cold. "And I want to make something clear. What you did at dinner wasn't just a small disagreement. You chose to reject the family. You're rejecting us." I sat down, trying not to let her words rattle me. "I'm not rejecting anyone," I said, meeting her eyes. "I'm simply standing up for myself. I've built my career, and I'm proud of it. I'm not going to throw that away just because it doesn't align with what you want." Aunt Anne's eyes narrowed. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't about your career. It's about loyalty. You're being stubborn. You think you've made the right choice, but you haven't." I took a deep breath, holding my ground. I've been loyal to this family my entire life. I've given up so much to make everyone happy. But now it's my turn to decide what's best for me. For a moment, she was quiet. Then, in a tone that made me feel like I was a little kid again, she said, "You think this is just about the business, don't you? Well, it's not. It's about belonging, Jessica, and you're walking away from it." I stood up. "I'm not walking away from you. I'm just not going to let my life be defined by what you think is best for me." Aunt Anne looked at me for a long time, her face stiff with anger and disappointment. But as the silence stretched on, something shifted in her eyes. Maybe it was a sense of realization that I wasn't going to be bullied into doing what she wanted anymore. She sighed heavily. "Fina, I suppose there's nothing more to say. You've made your choice." I nodded, the weight of the moment sinking in. "I have." We didn't say anything else after that. I walked out of her house with a strange sense of relief. I knew it wasn't over, not really, but I had said everything I needed to say. I wasn't going to apologize for pursuing my own happiness. So, now I'm left wondering if I made the right call. Was I wrong to stand up to Aunt Anne? Was I too harsh? Or did I do the right thing by finally asserting myself? The family dynamics are clearly strained, and I have no idea how things are going to go from here. But I'm starting to think it might be better to face the consequences than keep pretending that everything's fine when it's not. So, am I the a-hole? What do you all think? If you've enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this.